Hello there, everyone. If you're watching this video, then you are part of the TTOR army, an army that is building itself up one subscriber at a time. Now, before we get into the topic of today's video, I would just like to ask you, the viewer, a simple question. How is your day going? Now, obviously, I can't interact with you live because this is a pre-recorded video, but hopefully you're having a good day. Hopefully you're not having a bad day. And regardless of what kind of day you're having, if you'd like, please tell me about your day in the comment section down below. And as soon as I can, and as good of a manner as I can, I will get back to you. So now that we've done our checkup for the day, let's get into today's topic. Today we're going to be analyzing a religious skeptic, not an atheist, who indirectly claimed, at least recently, that people like Brett Keane were never true atheists, and therefore their conversion from atheism to Christianity, theism, etc., wasn't a real conversion because they never were atheists to begin with. But we will get to that specific claim towards the end of the video. We have to do a little bit of background stuff that we have to go through first. Now, the user in particular, this religious skeptic who's not an atheist, was this person, which you can see right here on screen, Kheart, who is a chick, who is a religious skeptic, but as you'll see in a later post that she made, she admitted she's not an atheist. So, since she's not an atheist, but she's against organized religion in general, we can classify her safely as a skeptic, or more specifically, a religious skeptic. So, Kheart, on December 6, made a tweet where she said, "The biggest advocates against religion are those who used to be deep into it." Now, this tweet is true, but the implications of it, well, they're not so good for atheism and religious skeptics like her. So, is it true that the biggest advocates against religion are those who used to be deep into it? That actually is a true claim. For example, we have people like Viced Rhino, who've been atheist content creators for years, but Viced Rhino, according to his interactions with me, used to be a Bible-believing young earth creationist. He used to be that before he became an atheist content creator, and since he has, over 79,000 subs, and he gets pretty good traffic on his videos, you could say he's a prominent religious skeptic or a prominent atheist skeptic, as far as like a religious skeptic who's an atheist. You could say that he's now a prominent person in that crowd, and he used to be a Christian. Then there's Pelagia, who has over 105,000 subs, and he used to be a Bible-believing young earth creationist and a Christian before he left the faith and did this whole atheist content creation career. As you can even see in his YouTube banner, he says, "Pelagia, a former Christian, takes a look at the claims of Christians." So yes, it is true that there are atheist content creators, or the biggest advocates against religion, who used to be in that religion. Primarily, we're talking about former Christians turning into atheists and religious skeptics, which Kheart in her tweets in these threads admitted that she had bad experiences with the Christians and the church in her life, and that this led to her down her path towards deconversion, with some stops along the way that apparently had nothing to do with that. But anyway, her claim is true that some of the biggest advocates against religion are those who used to be deep into it. But what is the implication of it? Well, the implication of it is that, that religion, i.e. the biblical worldview, Christianity, it must be false because some of the biggest advocates against the biblical worldview and Christianity, or insert religion, used to be deep into Christianity, the biblical worldview, or insert religion. Well, that logic may seem sound at first glance until you apply it to atheism and you realize that it's a self-defeating argument. I would just as easily argue that the biggest advocates against atheism are those who used to be deep into it. For example, we got David Wood of Act 17 Apologetics, which he now runs Act 17 Polemics, as well as a couple other channels, and he gave his original channel of over 700,000 subs to someone else. But David Wood used to be an atheist prior to becoming a Christian and spending years debunking Islam and occasionally making videos refuting atheists and religious skeptics on the internet. So David Wood used to be an atheist. I mean, we're talking the real deal. We're talking about there is no God, therefore there is no objective morality, therefore there's nothing wrong with any vile, disgusting thing I want to do, whether it be violent, sexual, whatever. David Wood was that kind of atheist before he got saved, and even though he is still a clinically diagnosed psychopath, his Christianity, his faith, contains his darker and deeper impulses most of the time. And I'm not saying that to implicate that David Wood has done anything illegal or criminal. He's just, not a perfect person. Let's put it that way. And he's been honest about who he is in recent years on his channel, so it's not like it's a big old secret. I mean, David's been pretty honest about what kind of person he has been and currently still is on his channel in recent years. But still, he used to be a militant, diehard atheist, converted to the biblical worldview and having a Christian faith. So obviously, some of the biggest skeptics of atheism, people like David Wood, they used to be atheists. And then, of course, there's Brett Keane, who has returned to YouTube recently, and I'm glad he did because I do enjoy watching his videos, and we've done several collabs together too. But Brett Keane, back in the early days of YouTube, back in I think 2006, when he first got on YouTube, he was an atheist. He actually is the pioneer of the entire YouTube atheist community. People like Pelagia and Viced Rhino and Professor Stick and Godless Engineer and Logic, Armored Skeptic and Logic and all of those people. All of those prominent or semi-popular atheist YouTubers, they had the path for being atheist content creators on YouTube. They had that path paved for them by Brett Keane. Brett Keane was the first atheist content creator to get popular on YouTube back in its early years. This is the guy who, for over a decade, was a diehard atheist, and he was as good as it got in their community when it came to going after Christians and religious people in general. So, when Brett Keane converted to Christianity several years ago and started God TV Radio and started doing the Christian content creation thing, and he made many, many videos debunking atheism and evolution, obviously the atheist skeptic community was a little shocked and a little surprised, although some of them have coped with this by claiming that Brett Keane was only doing the whole Christian content creator thing to make money for himself, even though that has not worked out for Brett in the slightest way. Me neither. Imagine that. Imagine being a true Bible-believing Christian and criticizing atheism and evolution, and oh my gosh, no one wants to give you money after you do that. Oh, what a shock. So yeah, Brett Keane is someone who used to be a diehard militant atheist. He was the first popular atheist content creator on YouTube. He was the pioneer of what is currently the atheist YouTube community. So if it's true, or if it's implied to be true, that religions are false because some of the biggest advocates against them used to be deep into it, well then we have to conclude by implication that atheism must be false because some of the biggest advocates against atheism are those who used to be deep into it. This is absolutely true. Now, the best case scenario you could say is that, well, just because some former atheists converted to other worldviews doesn't necessarily prove that atheism is false. Even if I were to agree with you hypothetically on that, the problem is that the argument made by people like Kheart here is self-defeating. It can be used just as easily and just as validly to debunk and disprove atheism. So the best case scenario, atheists should not make the point that the biggest advocates against religion are those who used to be deep into it, and then pretend this somehow disproves the truthfulness of said religion. because that can just as easily be turned onto atheism and cannot be refuted by that same logic. So therefore, atheists in the best case scenario should stop making this argument. But I decided with my gaming Twitter account to press Kheart on the matter to see, hey, how's she going to respond when someone brings this up to her? So we have Kheart here respond. Well, she made her post, and then someone named DMS Literary Journey said in response to her post that we looked at, "Ain't that the truth? Though often those same people often only accept the easy parts of said religion in the first place. When it came to the parts that kicked them in the rear, a lot of them bolted like a gazelle." Kheart said in response to DMS, "Not quite. Was brought up in the church, was one of the biggest advocates for it despite all the abuse I received. Tried to remember that was people, not God, but the more I dived into it, the more I saw. I eventually left after I had kids." I responded to both of them by saying, "I personally know or follow several prominent internet Christians who used to be diehard militant atheists. By your logic, this means that atheism has to be false because some of the biggest advocates against it are former atheists." So this person says, "It's funny, she never said false. You added that word in there on your own." Well, of course, to you beanie weenies, what I would point out is that people like Pelagia use the fact that they used to be a Christian as evidence that Christianity is false, because look, here's a guy who used to be a Christian and now he's making all of these videos and all these claims that prove that Christianity is false. So in reality, that's what atheist, religious skeptic content creators are doing. So even though I added a word in there that she didn't include in her original post herself, that's where her post goes when it's taken out and played out to its logical conclusion. So anyway, Kheart said in response, "You are very right. I didn't. I was purposely vague. Was just an observation that I find interesting. I also didn't attack any specific religion, just stated religion as a whole." And so I said to Kheart, "And I've observed literally the same thing in regards to atheism. Some of the biggest advocates against atheism are former diehard atheists who were deep into atheism." So Kheart said in response to me, "Okay, cool, LOL. I'm not as triggered by your statement as you think I am." Well, I wasn't trying to trigger you, Kheart. "But I do think they probably weren't true atheist, just lacked a better word for it. I'm not a atheist either, just don't believe in man-made religion." Wow! So according to Kheart, former atheists who converted to Christianity or theism, or both, they weren't true atheists. Wow. So when David Wood put out his testimony video 8 years ago talking about how he used to be a diehard atheist and his philosophy of atheism combined with his clinical diagnosis of being a psychopath almost put him in prison for life and could have led to him going down a much different life path, that was all fake. David Wood was never really an atheist before he converted to Christianity, even though he espoused belief in atheism, and the atheism combined with his issues almost led him to kill his dad. Yeah, I'm sure his atheism had nothing to do with it because he wasn't really an atheist in the first place. Because after all, if you're an atheist, you can never be deconverted to another worldview, right? And, Brett Keane, all he did was pioneer the entire YouTube atheist community. But yeah, I'm sure Brett Keane was never a true atheist, even though he talked like an atheist and said things that atheists say and did things that atheists do and basically, did the whole thing. He walked like a duck, quacked like a duck, did everything like a duck. Brett Keane was as atheist as you could be when he was an atheist content creator in his first, 7 to 8 years on YouTube, whatever it was. Brett Keane was as atheist as it got, but, well, apparently he wasn't a true atheist because of the fact that he deconverted from atheism to something else. Now, I'm the only person who responded to Kheart's post here, and I pointed out, okay, but how is claiming that they weren't true atheists any different than claiming that former Christians weren't true atheists? You see, Kheart here is guilty of committing the no true Scotsman fallacy. which is something that atheists actually like to accuse people like me of committing every time we point out that someone who deconverted from Christianity probably wasn't a real Christian who had a real saving relationship with Jesus. Now, the reason why we think that is Jesus himself said that no one could snatch his sheep from his hand. So the fact that someone fell away from the faith proves that they were never one of Jesus's sheep. When I say stuff like that, and when Christians say stuff like that, atheists will accuse me of committing the no true Scotsman fallacy. Kheart just committed the no true Scotsman fallacy, and no one had a word to say against her about it, even though most of her followers are atheists. So anyway, you may be thinking to yourself, well, what's the no true Scotsman fallacy? The no true Scotsman fallacy, or appeal to purity, is an informal fallacy in which one attempts to protect their universal generalization from a falsifying counterexample by excluding the counterexample improperly, rather than abandoning the falsified universal generalization or providing evidence that would disqualify the falsifying counterexample. A slightly modified generalization is constructed ad hoc to definitionally exclude the undesirable specific case and counterexamples like it by appealing to rhetoric. This rhetoric takes the form of emotionally charged but non-substantive purity platitudes such as true, pure, genuine, authentic, real, etc. Philosophy professor Bradley Dowden explains the fallacy as an ad hoc rescue of a refuted generalization attempt. The following is a simplified reduction of the fallacy. Premise A. No Scotsman puts sugar in his porridge. Person B. But my uncle Angus is a Scotsman and he puts sugar on his porridge. Person A. But no true Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge. So when a Christian like me points out that a Christian deconverting from the biblical worldview in essence wasn't a true or real Christian, atheists will accuse me and other Christians of committing the no true Scotsman fallacy. But when religious skeptics like Kheart claim that former atheists turned into Christians or theists, those guys probably weren't true atheists. She can literally commit the no true Scotsman fallacy in its most definitional, purest sense, and no one says anything to her. None of her atheist or religious skeptic followers on there said, whoa, wait, Kheart, we get where you're going and we sympathize with you, but you can't commit the no true Scotsman fallacy. We got to have principles here. And yet, that never happened. As you can see, there's only one reply to her no true Scotsman fallacy that she committed, and it was me pointing out to her that what she did was no different than Christians claiming that former Christians weren't true Christians. She does the very thing that a lot of skeptics and atheists will condemn people like me for doing, whether we actually did it or we allegedly did it. So if you're a Bible-believing Christian and you allegedly or theoretically commit the no true Scotsman fallacy, well then obviously you Christians are evil and you're committing a logical fallacy and you can just be disbelieved. But when a religious skeptic with lots of atheist and religious skeptic followers says that people who deconvert from atheism into Christianity or some other religion probably weren't true atheists, well, she gets a free pass. But I'm not surprised that the atheists and religious skeptics following Kheart gave her a free pass when she committed the no true Scotsman fallacy and claimed that former atheists who converted to Christianity were not true atheists or never were true atheists. I'm not surprised that the atheists and religious skeptics would give her a free pass on committing the no true Scotsman fallacy because atheists and evolutionists and religious skeptics, way more often than not, are complete and utter two-faced hypocrites who employ double standards in order to justify their worldview. They will give themselves a free pass on doing something that they would never in a million years dream of allowing a Christian to get away with. It is this kind of double-mindedness and hypocrisy and the kind of double standards employed by religious skeptics and atheists. This is why the atheists and religious skeptics make up such a tiny percentage of the population of the world. See, most people hate hypocrites. They hate people who are double-minded. They hate people who employ double standards to justify doing something or not doing something. And so that's why atheists and religious skeptics and similar people are not viewed kindly by the world population at large. When you're guilty of the very thing that you would have no problem accusing a Christian or a young earth creationist of doing or being, well, you're the biggest hypocrite and the most double-minded, two-faced person on the planet. And that is where atheism and religious skepticism takes you. Kheart is no exception. She is blind to the fact that she is committing logical fallacies in order to basically justify rejecting people converting from atheism to non-atheistic views as legitimate.